Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Social Anxiety. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all enjoying I guess it's not fall in Los Angeles yet, but there's certainly a. I walked outside this morning for my morning stroll and saw a single leaf changing. I think that pretty much captures what fall is like in Los Angeles. Hope you're all doing well. I don't go back and listen to these. I mean, I'll go back and listen to like a little bit for editing, but I don't listen to them in their entirety because I kind of can't stand the sound of my recorded voice. I just feel like I sound like a 16-year-old girl with a cold trapped in a hollow log. So those of you who do listen, I do appreciate it. And if you ever have any questions about any of the stuff, or want to elaborate on one of the points, or have suggestions, I am all ears. I think that the best things are done collaboratively. So fire away if and when inspired. I went down a Tom Jones rabbit hole on YouTube this weekend, and I became a fan of him, or some of his music anyway, through a semester of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas playing on a constant loop in our apartment. They use his music well in that movie. And I arrived at a video where he was performing in London in front of a large crowd with members of the royal family in attendance. And I scrolled the comments, and one of the ones along the top read, "This song is about murder. This song is a murder ballad." And I for one, I don't listen to lyrics as much. I never have. Sometimes I do. There are some musicians, and I guess some ways that they make the music that encourages me to hear the lyrics. But more often than not, I don't. Someone else chimed in below that comment and validated this claim with a short but concise dissection of the lyrics. Now, whether or not you see that as offensive is beside my point in this moment. It was a reminder that only art can enshroud a message in something completely different. So different, in fact, that it somehow allows the audiences to smile and sing along with what one could say are rather gruesome lyrics. Again, the gruesome part is up for debate and personal opinion. But still, this exhibits art's power of deception to get something across, whether sending a message to the masses or a niche group of people. It's something to think about as we continue to create with righting the wrongs of our culture in mind. And for me, it also inspires the question as to whether or not my work is a personal confession or an exercise in pushing an envelope. I don't know yet. What else? Cynthia Nixon with the L this week in New York. I tried to watch the debate between her and Cuomo, but could only stomach a minute of it. There was no dialogue, just the same banter and loud talking. I'm a believer in government and its ability to fix, maintain, and provide for the people, but I could also certainly do without politics, and I do think there's a difference. It seems that the more politics we have, the less government exists. The political realm today, and pretty much as far back as I can recall into my earliest recollection, which was during the Reagan years, the political realm is like a game of dodgeball, I think, in middle school gym class. You have the two teams lined up on either side of the gym with their hands on the wall, separated by a line of different sized balls in the middle. The gym teacher, always with inappropriately short shorts, at least where I went to school, blows the whistle and everybody storms the ball line, wrestling and fighting over who gets the ball. And this is immediately followed up by an onslaught of pelting and dodging and spinning and pain. Often we'll see the timid ones, out of fear and lack of confidence, throw their balls back to some 7-foot ogre named Ulysses or Shane to pick off the weak. There is no honor in politics, as I see it. There can be honor in government, but not in politics. And now with social media, most people think they are Ulysses in the political realm or otherwise. And I'm not saying having a hierarchy is a bad thing. It's good to an extent, but it has to be built on a platform of respect. Of course, that will not be honored by all, but those people will be weeded out if we do lead with respect, true respect, not only for the individual, but for the consequences of their decisions. Critical thinking should be used as a preventative measure, not for when shit becomes critical. That's a terribly worded sentence. I know, but it's something more people need to do more of, not just in politics. I heard someone say this week that those who want to be in a position of power over people are the very individuals who should not be put in positions of power. But how do we foster and grow space for those who might want to do it right, or even just try a little bit better at this point? I don't know. But this expectation to be and appeal to what and who is normal is not only dismantling our collective voice, but simultaneously our sense of individuality. I fought for a long time that if every day were treated with the same self-expressive freedom as Halloween, there would be less war and a greater collective understanding. Then one day a year, everyone would dress the same to honor and further realize our connectivity. I don't know. Why is it so prevalent for a lot of those who are corrupt in our culture to win? For the evils of war to be justified, but those who struggle to save a tree or animal are branded as a hippie or subhuman. People say they don't live in the real world. And the violence around us, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, seems to more often than not walk with the upper hand. It's the same as being the loudest person in the room. Unless we purchase tickets to see them, rarely are they appealing, but for some reason, they are so often given control of the space they occupy. Maybe they're given the control, maybe they just take it. I learned from an early age to be the peaceful diplomat, to harbor feelings and emotions for others over my own for the sake of the group, with my own physical and emotional person often finishing last. And I'm not sure what brings me more sadness, living in a violent world or catching a glimpse of what this world could be without violence and realizing that I am not living in that place. How do we dodge the punches of our culture's illness so to create the beauty we see? And I do believe that on some level we all see it, or at least experience it and realize that feeling that we had was right. I talked a bit last week about using the past as a guide and not an excuse. And while I still see great truth in that, the notion itself goes back and forth for me. I talked with a friend about this a while ago. And in his depiction, he made a distinction between the past and history. To simplify, as he sees it, history is the truth. History is not something that can be changed. It cannot be altered. When someone or something resides in our past, however, we're still alive with it, still immersed or affected by the actions of that past brought forth into this moment, into the present. I guess a simple example of this would be if you go through a breakup. If it's a bad one, it can stick with you for months or longer. The history is the breakup. That is what happened and that will not change. But you are still living in the past of the breakup when it affects your life today, perhaps keeping you from going out with friends or putting yourself out there to date again. This is a simple example, and I am not saying that we should not go through the motions to heal and recognize our own shit that we have to deal with. Yes, that can take time. But the question I keep asking myself is, how do we construct our culture to deal with our past so that we can move forward? So much of what is happening now is a clamoring to the edges, the two extreme sides where you have to shout louder and more people are choosing to be deaf towards anyone who uses a trigger word in a sentence. If we continue down this path, we will all become mimes, and who really likes mimes? No disrespect to mimes. No disrespect. I love you, mimes. All I'm saying is the past, I think, is something that we can still very much see and feel. It's something that's not done. And I think it's also something that we need to learn how to prevent. So how do we proceed healing a past that's not working now? How do we engage the violence and translate it? I think a lot of people are kind of waiting to see what happens. And if we're waiting around for everybody just to bomb each other, that's exactly what's going to happen. What are we waiting for? I don't think it's going to come in the form of an answer. Maybe a method. Either way, it's kind of elusive. A couple years ago, I bought a copy of the Harvard Business Review. Cue eye roll. Fucker was $18, $17, $18. It was expensive. But I'd never bought it. I'd never read it. I saw it used in plays and different reference, it was referenced in different articles and stuff like that through my life, and I said, why not? It was there. So I bought it. There was an article in there where the focus pondered the effectiveness of empathy in business. It drew parallels between companies that use empathy in marketing but don't necessarily practice it behind the scenes. And it compared it to those companies that attempt to practice empathy not only in what they provide, but in how they make it, and how they treat the environment, and how they treat their employees. The results were so that the companies that use empathy as a tool to sell, but not necessarily in their own practices, were far more successful financially than those who remain open and truly transparent about their practices. In either case, the article talked about a term making its way around these financial and consumer generators, as well as through some medical practitioners. And that term is called empathy fatigue. Empathy has quickly become a stylish model for success, I think, and that's a good thing in the hands of the right people. Others who see this success as a moral duty as well as a financial tactic. Those are the ones we want to have it. But as anyone who has overextended themselves for another person or cause knows, an overexertion of the practice of empathy can certainly result in drained resources, whether for the company or the individual. And this will leave the cause they originally set out to service recuperating before it even had a chance to run. And I know I'm being wordy here, but how do we apply this principle in a society where the sociopaths and psychopaths are often, not always, but often those in charge? How are we supposed to alter a consumer or personal climate where people in high-ranking positions are often the ones who can't feel? For if they did, the polluting decisions they are poised to make would be rendered nearly impossible for them to execute. I think an empathic venture can often be seen as something cowardly or weak. And a biological impulse against this would be to fight back, defend, or protest. But what if we did something else? What if we were more discerning with where we put our empathy and just simply walked away from that which does not serve us? Walking away from a job or a person or a venture that leaches from your core is not giving up. It's self-preservation. It's fuel to engage that other gut-burning impulse of purpose that we so often ignore, but we will regret never attempting as we take our final breath if we don't at least try at it. And there's a difference between struggling for hard, rewarding work or hard, rewarding relationships and putting up with bullshit. Be discerning. Be stubborn, too. You're not always right, but if you're living true to your passion and you're not harming another person, you're never wrong. Stubborn is just another word for knowing you're right, says the Sagittarius, if you believe in that stuff. If your venture or association with others is hurting you, stop. I think we should just be okay with just quitting that stuff. You will be fine. And perhaps the shift begins there. This world does not need more fighters. It needs tacticians. It needs critical thinking. It needs people who love and respect themselves enough to try at who they are. For with this, if they do this, I believe empathy will become a residual gift to the collective by way of the destination into oneself.